in progress.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming in from. This is Vanessa Donaldson with your Life Beyond the Military. And today we are talking things all military. We've got Aaron Ingram here. You see his website underneath. He's with preveteran.com. Hi, Aaron. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, see you again, Vanessa.
Yes, little background on Aaron, since we're live and we're trying to do this within a confined amount of time to give as much value as we can to our audience here. So Aaron is going to be talking about things about transitioning from the military, and his 3 topics are his journey as a Navy pilot, from Navy pilot life all the way to commercial real estate. That's like a real mindset shift of different things there, but that's what he's going to be talking about. Also, the current military transition system. He has a lot of nuggets on that because there's still a lot to be worked on in that department. So I'm so glad he could join us to give us some information on that. And then the third part he's going to talk about is the private industry and why the skills translators don't work. I really want to hear about that. And I've had people messaging me on the side too, like, why aren't they translating? Why isn't it working? So Aaron's going to tell us why. So thank you so much, Aaron, for joining, and just give a little background of yourself and we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Vanessa, and thanks for having me on. I really love what you're doing with this whole platform and just how you're getting information out to the community. I know you're super passionate about this and just about helping veterans, so I think that's awesome. And I know you did your time as a mil spouse and saw what that transition looked like from the spouse perspective. So I think that's a super valuable experience that you've had that you can add to the conversation. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm kind of like you said, I spent 10 years as a Navy pilot. So I commissioned in 2012 and served from 2012 to 2022. Now with our pilot contracts, we kind of owe 8 years from our winging. So I ended up doing the 2 years of flight school and then 8 years after that, which I really enjoyed my time. I flew the P-8 Poseidon, which was a great platform and aircraft to fly. It's basically a Boeing 737.
Wow, just basically, a massive jet.
Yeah.
I know about the C-17s. I've done some space available, but what was the Poseidon? That sounds like some fancy thing.
Yeah, right. So our primary mission was anti-submarine warfare, but then we did surveillance and reconnaissance. And I spent most of my time in Asia, Pacific region. So I really enjoyed my time out there and kind of had a growing family at the same time as I was serving during that time. So things changed for me, right? I went from initially being a single guy to being engaged to getting married to having kids. And all of a sudden during my service, I found myself, I had 3 kids. My wife was pregnant with our 4th. I'm on a tour overseas in Okinawa, Japan. I'm figuring out if I'm going to stay in or get out. And I was like, man, if I stay in the military right now, I knew because of the career progression and how it works, my next tour was going to be on an aircraft carrier, and I was going to be either an air ops or a shooter or one of these jobs on an aircraft carrier as a pilot that they have us do where you're basically not flying. And so for us pilots, we're like, really, you're going to put me on the sidelines and have me not fly and stick me on a ship and have me do ship duties? And for us, that's like, death. So I did not
want to do that in my mind, but I'm like, oh, that might be harsh, but I was thinking death.
Like I did all this training and you're going to have me sit down and not fly. All right. But then beside that, I would have been away from my family for a really long time, right? And
So what age did you join? How old were you?
So I went to the Naval Academy at 18, and then I graduated at 22 and earned my commission then. And so I went through flight school, which took about 2 years. So at 24, I was at my first squadron and starting to get qualified in the P-8. And so I went on 2 deployments with VP-8 and really enjoyed my time there, like I said. But because of all that change that I underwent at that time, it was like things totally shifted for me. And the appeal of staying in, of, going to the aircraft carrier, being away from my family, that just totally went away. And so I was like, all right, I think I want to get out. I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know how to do that yet. We had kind of been into real estate based on our moves. So when we had moved, we had, purchased a house. Instead of selling it, we ended up renting it out. And through that, we ended up being landlords.
Good strategy.
Not an intentionally planned thing, but it ended up happening. And so from that, I kind of got this real estate bug. I was like, oh, that was super cool. Instead of selling our house, we rented it out, and now we're making money every month on it, and we're keeping it. That's great. And so I did a bunch of education, and we got really into that. So meanwhile, while we're growing as a family, I was investing in real estate and growing that side business, kind of side hustle I had going on. So that's where my mind went with transition. And I was like, all right, how do I go into real estate? I don't want to be a realtor. I'm not like that sales kind of person. That just wasn't for me. And so I started looking at careers, but I just found it really hard to navigate and figure out if I want to do that or if I wanted to do something related to my degree. Because I knew if I had, when I decided to get out, if I continued flying for one of the major airlines, I was going to have the same problem where I was going to be gone all the time. People don't realize this. They kind of look at the guys in the, in the pilot outfits walking through the airport, and they think, oh, that's such an awesome job. That must be so fun. And like, yeah, it's cool and it's fun to fly, but they're on the road all the time and they're away from their families a lot. And it's actually kind of a hard life, and they get compensated for it, but it's not as easy as you think. And I'm, luckily I recognized this early, and I knew that was going to be something I wanted to avoid because I wanted more time with my wife and kids.
Right. I'll interject one thing. I knew one couple, actually. He was a pilot for Delta, little plug for Delta Airlines, and the wife was a flight attendant. And so their entire career, like I've had talks and conversations with her. It's amazing. Our daughters cheered at school in high school together. And they were on planes together. Every time I saw her Facebook post, it shows her husband in the captain's chair and her with her outfit on, serving the passengers. And I'm like, how did you guys do that? But they somehow created their life together so that to avoid that separation, and they were flying together all over the world. I mean, they're constantly going someplace, and now their son's learning to fly. I mean, it's a whole family thing, but that's the only way it's going to work, I think, if you're flying with your spouse. I don't know if your spouse wanted to go through flight attendant school.
That wasn't our situation. That was not going to be our situation with 4 young kids. So
no,
going to work out, but I knew, I was like, all right, so how do I figure out what's next? And I go through TAP and I'm trying to figure it all out. And during that whole time period, 3 days, I did the Air Force TAP. It was like 1 week long. So it was the more robust version of what you can do. And it was in person during COVID. Just a weird time, right? So I got some useful information out of TAP, but it just wasn't answering those big questions that I had. Like, how do I actually transition though? They gave me like a million websites and resources. I have my book back there on the shelf from my transition still, where they give you this binder and have you make your transition plan.
The binder.
Just from the financial brief, I have this 3-page sheet just from the financial brief where it was 3 pages of just links to different websites. With no explanation of like, what does this link do? How do I use it? How is this useful to me? So it just felt.
You really touch on a point. You really touch on a point, because that's the overwhelm. They're like, we're providing all kinds of resources, and it's link after link after link. Yes. And what are we going to do with that? Even the spouse, like that's not sustainable. It just gets you down rabbit holes of clicking places. Like we need more direction than that. So. Yeah, that's huge. A binder for all your finances to plan your whole future, just a 3-page link. I mean, I know they're trying. It's a machine, and they're trying to process people out in droves, but we've got to do more for our vets.
And resources are great, right? But if you don't have the training and no one shows you how to use it, or even worse, if the person giving you the resource has never used it themselves and doesn't know how to use it, then it's kind of the blind leading the blind. And it's like, well, what are we doing here? I don't even know what this resource does or how it helps me. When there's a lot more really practical stuff that someone needs to walk you through to help you out in a more effective manner. And so to me, I was just frustrated, I think, by the process, but I did get some useful things out of it. And, meanwhile, I was kind of spinning my wheels doing all these different activities. I got my PMP. I was like reaching out to all these people. I was trying to do interviews with random connections I had made. And that's how I ended up getting a hold of Jason Anderson at Pre-Veteran. So I was like, oh, he works for an aerospace and defense company. I want to go work in aerospace and defense, which I thought was, at the time, I thought maybe that was a path I could pursue. And I just hadn't done any research. And so I came across as a total bozo because I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't even know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
But say like, hey, get a mentor, do informational interviews. I had no idea what to ask though. And no one tells you that. They don't tell you the next step. They just say, hey, do this thing, but they don't actually teach you how to do that or what specific questions to ask. So all this is to say I have very personal experience with my own transition. I know now talking to, hundreds of veterans I've talked to at this point that are transitioning and going through very much the same things. The whole emotional cycle that I went through is very common. And most people go through the same thing where you start with a level of kind of overconfidence. And then as they get closer and closer to transition, it starts becoming like a panic. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that's so true. I talked with another vet. We were doing a LinkedIn Live, and it took him about 6 years to like regroup and get grounded with trial and error, lost a wife in the process, self-medicating, all kinds of stuff that's totally normal. And things happen like that because you're at the top of your game and all of a sudden you're just stuck. And then depression sets in and like, what the heck am I doing? And my skills don't translate, which we'll get to. So yeah, 6 years to kind of, get back on track again. And we don't want that for our vets. And that's just one story. I know there's more like that out there. Right. So I appreciate what you're doing to bridge that gap. Because really we can't have vets that have just, here they are active duty. They're at the top of their game. They've mastered all this stuff. And then they go out and, you hear stories like, well, they picked up a side job at the 7-Eleven or, everybody runs to Home Depot or Lowe's for a little, side gig for $15 an hour or something. I'm like, what are we doing to our vets? Like from a paycheck to $15 to sustain a family, Yeah.
And it really, hit me like a ton of bricks when I read this stat, but according to the Economic Policy Institute, 1 in 5 veterans or 1.8 million veterans are currently paid less than $15 an hour.
Yes.
And what is this cohort of people? 2/3 are 40 years old or older. So they were a senior enlisted or an officer. 61% have college experience and 69% work full-time.
Oh my God, I just got shivers with that. That's a horrible statistic. That's awful.
And I say that not to scare people, but a little bit to just like, hey, this should be a reality check that it's not necessarily going to be as easy as you think. And I think we really do a disservice to veterans by telling them that it's all going to be sunshine and roses when they get out, and that, oh, you're good, you have all the skills, everyone's going to be clamoring to give you a job. And I talk to folks that are getting out every day that have that sort of overconfident can-do attitude because of their experience in the military, and they've done so many hard things. But in their brain they start telling themselves that, oh, I got this, no problem. And then everyone's telling them the same. But what does that do to your actions? That tells you like, okay, I can take a step back. I can sort of slow down. I don't have to do any work here. I can sort of glide through this and I'm good to go because I have this experience or that experience. I have this background and people are going to be clamoring to hire me. And they actually think that, and then they get hit in the face with the reality of that's just not the case, that it's a very competitive marketplace and you have to have very specific skill sets for a very specific role. And, what you did in the military doesn't always translate one for one. You can say you managed a budget in the military, but all the military does is they get funding from the government. Taxes are levied. The military is legislated into existence, and it's always going to exist into perpetuity. And so it's an assured existence with a budget that's always there. And so all they have to do is spend money. They don't have to cash flow. They don't have to make money. So you can say, hey, I managed this budget in the military. And you can try to say that to private industry, but they're going to say, okay, but did you have any responsibility to actually earn money for the company? Did you have to keep the company alive by bringing dollars in the door? Or did you just have to spend a budget? Because those are different things. In private industry, spending a budget, that's just considered a cost center. That's a totally different activity than running a business unit where it has to cash flow. So there's a lot of
great example.
Yeah, there's a lot of gaps in business knowledge that we find that a lot of military folks have. But kind of going back to that constrained environment where we're trying to do all this activity in the very end of our military service, I just want to say that there really is a military transition crisis out there. And the more we identify what that looks like and kind of contextualize it, I think it can help us really solve that problem and start making better headway on it, right?
Yes, we want solutions. Yes, so true. And I just want to chime in here. We've got Phil online in the comments, and Diana, thanks for joining us. Phil's a military veteran as well, and he's writing, I can relate. He's in Jacksonville, Florida.
Nice.
He can totally relate with what you're talking about. He's been there himself. And I've talked to vets that have almost gone homeless. I mean, even Phil shared his story. He's very open. I mean, he ended up in a van, not like the van life like us, like, planning our finances and exploring America with our life in order and doing Airbnbs and managing our properties. But because he's losing his wife and his house and he's in a van, it's a very different kind of van life experience. So this is the reality. I mean, several vets I've talked to, I know one guy living in a garage at his parents' house in his 50s. He just can't move on and can't, the mindset's stuck, and then you're depressed when you're dependent on somebody else. It just is a spiraling downhill. So yeah, it's a crisis. You're right. And we do want a solution. We don't want to just scare people off. We want people to know there's hope. And the more we communicate about it, like, we can make it better. There's things we can do for sure.
Absolutely. So if there's one message that anyone takes away from this whole conversation, I would say start your transition earlier. Start earlier. Whoever needs to hear this, I'll say it. Start transition earlier.
And you've mentioned it to me. I thought maybe 1 year earlier, but you're the one that put that bug in my ear that said, no, Vanessa, actually, it's more like a 3-year path before you get out. So
think of all the activities that you're going to do. Your life insurance needs are going to change. You're going to have to figure out life insurance. You're going to have to figure out your VA claim. If you're aware of that process, you do something called the benefits before discharge or benefits delivery at discharge, which you kind of need to start that process a year plus out to start getting your medical documentation. You need to start figuring out your finances. Hey, am I moving from overseas back to the States? That was my case. I have to pay for 2 cars. I have to pay for a house for my family. How do I save enough money to do all that? How do I give myself financial security for that transition? How do I plan that whole thing out? Also, who am I and what do I want to do next? Because I've spent the last decade flying airplanes for the Navy, and now I'm going to do something totally different. How do I navigate that? I mean, that's just overwhelming because that's all I've known, right? I mean, I joined at 18, went through the academy, and then have been in aviation ever since. And so now I'm in my 30s going out to the job market and trying to be relevant in something that, I don't have a ton of experience in necessarily. And so I might be looking at associate or entry-level roles with others in the marketplace. And that can be a very humbling experience because, sometimes they might have you scanning documents or something mundane. And you're like, I was responsible for a $200 million aircraft and a crew of 9 people. And, you start telling yourself these things and get frustrated, and it's really hard to navigate, but you have to understand that, hey, what do I want? How do I make that happen? And how do I do that intentionally? And it takes more time than you think. So if there's one message I want to get out there, it's start your transition earlier. And when we talk about the military transition crisis, that's occurring for 2 reasons. 1, people aren't starting early enough. And number 2, there's no individual training.
Yes, or mentorship. I would say add mentorship in there too for
Right.
spouses.
Sure. I mean, mentorship is hugely important, but how do you even know which mentors can best help you, right? Because
Mhm.
if my mentor is my executive officer who's still active duty and I'm asking him about transition, not going to
No.
be helpful. And while you're still active duty, by the way, your network and everyone around you is probably still active duty. And if you're asking them for advice, guess what? They're going to give you bad advice because they don't know how to transition either. They've never done it. So don't listen to them. Listen to people
On the other side.
yes, listen to people who are on the other side, who served, who got out, who are doing maybe the job that you want to do, and say, hey, how did you do that? You know, what did that look like? What were the challenges? What are some certifications or things you wish you would have done earlier to set yourself up for success? So,
Right. And was it you that said that for every year that we're in the military, we're 1 year behind the civilian side? I'm not sure if I spoke with you offline.
yeah, I
or
mean,
what.
that's kind of the concept, right? Is that if you can imagine that you're right next to your counterparts graduating high school, and you go off and serve, whether that's, you know, you do ROTC and then go serve, get commissioned, or whether you sign up and you're going straight off to boot camp, your roadmaps start going like this, and your peers are in private industry working a career and a job that whole time, while you're in the military doing a job the whole time. Now, the difference is that they stay in private industry. They don't tend to pivot into the military at 30 years old. Whereas there's a lot of military folks that find themselves in, you know, their 20s, 30s, 40s getting out of the military. And now the distance between them and their peers has grown and grown. And they're trying to compete in the marketplace for those jobs where their peers have been in that industry for maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And you think you're going to just jump in there and compete against them. I mean, that's ridiculous. That would be as if I said, hey, you know, your buddy from high school from 20 years ago, he's going to join the army and become an E7. That would be
Not-
ridiculous, right? But that's basically what a lot of folks are saying when they get out, that, hey, I'm just going to like go right
Slide.
up to this manager supervisor position in an industry and job that I don't even understand.
Mm.
And so this all gets to why skilled translators don't work. Let me tell you why they don't work. And they teach this so many places, and I've seen it in TAP, and I've seen it even advance with AI, right? That, hey, now there's AI skilled translators that can do it even better than before. And what these things are doing is it's basically taking your job title, job description from your military experience, and then changing the words and phraseology around what that meant into what they consider private industry language and speech. And so what they're trying to do is say, hey, you just called this X in the military. In private industry, it's called Y. You know, you said that you were the department head of this shop. That was just considered a manager position in the private industry. Whatever that looks like, they just start translating things one for one in that way, and try to say that, hey, this is just called that in the private industry. The problem is people buy this hook, line, and sinker, and they think this is the perfect way to translate your military skills into the private sector. And I'm here to say that doesn't work. It's not going to get you through the door. It's not going to get you maybe even to a job interview, or if it does, at the job interview, it's going to become a challenge for you to relate your background and experience to the job role. So what I see a lot is that people fail to identify what they want to do down to the industry, company, role, and level. And you really need that specificity when you're transitioning. Figure out what you want to do down to the industry, company, role, and level. If you do not do that, then you're not going to know what you're talking about. So you need to do that, one, to tailor your resume for the position, and then number two, to understand what the position actually is. So every single job out there has a job description in the role as it's advertised, and it tells you exactly what background, experience, skills they're looking for. All that stuff needs to be related on your resume. And I see a lot of general resumes. I have people reach out to me, hey, can you look at my resume? I say, okay, what are you looking at? Oh, I want to be a project manager. I got my project management professional thing. I want to be a project manager. Okay, great. What industry do you want to be a project manager for? Like, what do you mean? Like, well, what industry are you looking at getting a job in? It's like, well, I just want to be a project manager. Like, all right. Here's the deal. Project management in software development is very much different than pharmaceutical sales.
Right. I did solar, very different from something else.
Project management in construction is very different than manufacturing. Like, I can't explain enough that these things are so vastly different. You're never going to be able to just change a word or think that, hey, yeah, what I did was leadership and project management in the military, so I'm going to go be a project manager. And this is the skill translator mindset, right? I'm a project manager. That's how I'm going to sell myself after the military. Okay, great, if that's what you want to do. But you still better identify down to the industry, company, role, and level what that's going to look like for you. And you better explore those specific job postings, see the exact skills and experience they're looking for, and then be able to relate your background and experience to that. And I say that to say it's a challenge to do that. If you were an infantryman in the Marine Corps and
my husband, basically,
trying to do something different, it's like, okay, I can't just go out in the private industry, and I don't want to do private security, or I don't want to do the clear law enforcement career path ahead of me. I want to do something different. So how do I translate that? There is a way to do that, but it's not through a skills translator. What you have to do is you have to understand the business, understand the role, understand how the company makes money, which is actually a pretty complex operation, which is done through different business units in the organization. Each business unit has a number of programs within it. Programs make money for the business. Your role is going to fit into one of those programs and that program lifecycle. Mm-hmm. It's super important to understand this, because once you understand my role fits into this program, here's how this program makes money. This program making money makes money for this business unit, which makes money for the organization as a whole. And once you can understand and relate that and understand your background and experience and how it fits into that job role making money, then you can understand what your employer actually wants. Okay, they want to make money, right? They want to continue to exist as a business and be competitive. So how they do that is through this mechanism, through these business units, through the programs, and through your specific role, which they need to fill. But you need to be competitive for that specific role, and you need to contribute to the company making money. And how you communicate and relate that is dependent on how well you understand the role and how it makes money. The more you understand the role and how it makes money, the better chance you have of getting that job, I guarantee it. And that's how you translate your skills. That is how you translate your skills. It's not through changing a word in what you did in the past. It's through actually understanding the private industry and how it operates.
I would say also, confidence in presenting yourself too. Like there has to be some type of presentation skills involved and how you ask those leading questions in the interview. So that's just the baseline to maybe get your foot in the door for an interview, right? And then there's other things that need to happen to really make sure that you're the fit and you have the right vibe with the company and that kind of thing. So
confidence comes with knowledge and training, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, as we know, we train for deployments and all these other things. That confidence level comes with repetition, with training, and with knowledge. And so what I'm here to say is that you need to start with that level of knowledge. And once you have that, the rest is very easily done, because we know that military people have this bias for action, that once we understand something and we know how to execute, we'll go execute every time. Easy.
Just tell us what to do. That's how we operate.
We'll execute on stuff that we don't need to do. We'll waste a bunch of time and effort on it. I don't want that to happen. I want to be useful.
I got one question here before we get off, because this is fascinating, and I know we could probably do a whole series on this. So Phil's asking, well, he's saying more like networking. He's bringing up the whole thing of networking, and that it accounts for 97% of how you get your foot in the door. What do you have to add about networking? Is that really a big play now? I mean, I do a lot of networking, but it's still tough.
Absolutely. So, your resume and stuff, that'll get you in the door. That'll get you to the interview process. Who do they select? Well, guess what? Word of mouth is a much stronger play than anything else. So if there's someone already at the company that has a level of trust and has a level of reputation at the company, and they're saying, hey, you should really hire this guy, he's awesome, that goes a long, long way, because hiring managers don't have a ton of time to spend on candidates. They want to select someone more quickly. And if someone that's a great employee at the company already is saying this person should be hired and advocating for you, that goes a very long way. So absolutely, network on LinkedIn is, I think, the best platform to do that. But there are any number of ways to do that depending on your goals and what you're trying to do. But I do want to say that we have a webinar May 31st.
Yes, tell us about webinar and how people can reach you.
Yeah, so Pre-Veteran, we have a website, preveteran.com, as you see below my name. Please go visit us there. We have an upcoming, our next course is in June, our next employment prep course, where we kind of get you ready to navigate those things I just discussed, figure out how do I understand private industry. We help you do that in the employment prep course, and we have an awesome community you go into after that with a bunch of additional free training. So that is in June. But in May, May 31st, we have our webinar, which will add a bunch of context and information around kind of what we just discussed today. So go to the LinkedIn, the Pre-Veteran page on LinkedIn, and you'll see our event there. And please sign up. It's a free webinar. It'll just be an hour long. We'll record it as well. And yeah, we hope to see you.
Don't you have a nonprofit component too, and can help?
We do. So if you're, on the philanthropic side and you like to contribute and help others, we have the Pre-Veteran Foundation, which is preveteranfoundation.org. Please go there and contribute. What we're doing with the organization is providing scholarships for individuals to take our course, because we are a for-profit company and we have individuals pay out of pocket to take our course. I know it makes everyone gasp when I say that. You're making military people pay for something? I thought everything's free.
I know, me too with coaching. Like, can't you just coach everybody for free?
Yeah. No, guess what? This is your first lesson on private industry, that when you have value, or when you're asking for something and you have value given to you, that there's an exchange of either time, money, or some kind of ask that occurs in that exchange. And that's just how things work. And we also want you to be involved and have skin in the game and be really engaged in the teaching and the program that we do. So part of that is asking you to pay out of pocket. But for folks that cannot afford to pay out of pocket for the course, we do offer scholarships through the foundation. So if you feel like you want to support maybe junior enlisted or mil spouses, please go to preveteranfoundation.org. Donate some money that will go towards a scholarship for one of those individuals to get into our course, which will help them, hopefully navigate a more successful transition journey, which is really what we're trying to provide at Pre-Veteran.
And final question, is this mainly for you trying to catch them when they're still active duty 2-3 years ahead? But if people are veterans, they can go there as well?
Yes. So, we, like I said, our whole program and our intent is that we're trying to get to folks 1 year out or further from their transition, because we're kind of trying to shift the market and get ahead of a lot of the downstream problems that we see with wellness, with employment stability once they get out. And that the 2-year period after people transition out is the most problematic. So that's really what we're trying to address, and we're trying to do it within the active duty community before those folks are getting out. And we see that as the core of our mission. We are still trying to serve the other part of the market as well. And I'm happy to, work with and talk to any veterans out there that are struggling, having a hard time, or, looking for advice on, hey, I'm one of those $15 an hour guys, and I know I'm more valuable than that. What are my next steps? I'm happy to talk to you. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. So
Awesome. Awesome. We went a little over, but such good information. I could not cut that off. So I think we got a good overview of Aaron Ingram and preveteran.com. So thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy with a lot of moving parts, but appreciate your time here. And I will be in touch with you on LinkedIn, and we keep networking, connecting people, and moving forward with our mission, staying passionate.
Thank you, Vanessa. And I hope this was helpful to somebody, and that it wasn't just me rambling.
No. Oh my gosh, it was not rambling. It was awesome. And I'm Vanessa Donaldson. So you can reach me at resetwithvanessa.com for more information there on how I help military spouses and group empowerment and mentorship programs. So that is the space we're in. And we just want to help military families thrive on the other side when they get out. So reach out. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And we want to help. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.